I'm Tony Shepard, 30 years tracking organized retail crime and working major busts.
And I'm Johnny Custer, 30 years turning loss prevention into a profit-driving powerhouse with analytics and strategy.
Every episode, we break down the latest in retail risk, security, and total loss prevention. What's real, what's hype, and what's coming next.
And yeah, we'll probably have some fun along the way.
Welcome to It's Your Loss with Tony and Johnny. Retail crime, retail loss, the future of loss prevention.
All right. Hello, everybody. Here we are, another episode of It's Your Loss with Tony and Johnny. We have our guest here today, Khris Hamlin. Excited to have him on. Good to see you, Khris.
Hamlin.
As
Hey, guys.
always.
I'm excited to be here chatting with you guys. Good stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think I know Johnny sent you the parameters and stuff, but we try to keep this light. This isn't it's a very informal conversation. We try to keep it real here on this podcast. So nothing too serious. More about you, Khris, and we'll get you. We're going to get you some interesting questions at the end there, of course.
Yeah, Khris, so as much as we want to learn about loss prevention on this call, we really want to learn more about Khris on this call. So the questions are going to get a little probing.
Oh, boy.
Answer what you feel comfortable with.
Okay.
All right.
Look, now you guys, I've known you guys for some time, so like this might get interesting. So I'm going to be ready to jump out of here if I have to jump out of here. So we'll see what happens, though.
I understand. Yeah, this podcast is a little more tacky than some of the other ones that you've seen out there. So yeah, I'll apologize in advance. So let's just jump into it, Khris. You know, I think everybody knows who you are, or at least the vast majority, because you've kind of stepped into a very large leadership role in the industry. But tell us a little bit about your current role and how long you've been there, and then we'll kind of get to your journey after that.
Yeah. I'll start. A lot of people are like, okay, so you're with RILA. What is RILA? You know, who is RILA? What is RILA? And everything like that. So I'll break it down very simply. So RILA, it's an acronym, first off. It stands for the Retail Industry Leaders Association. And we are a US-based trade association that represents some of the largest and most innovative retail companies across the US. Major brands come to mind like Walmart, Target, Best Buy, Home Depot, CVS, and many more. So pretty much any of your larger major retailers that are out there are probably members of RILA. RILA is set up at a way where we advocate for the retail industry in several different spaces. So we advocate at the public policy space. We advocate on different levels of operational excellence, innovation, sustainability, and of course, my remit, which is asset protection. So, you know, the other thing I'll tell you too, Johnny, before you jump in there is that, you know, some people will say, you know, what makes RILA different than other associations out there? Well, you know, RILA, the members of RILA are generally those executive level leaders. So your COOs, your CEOs, your VPs that are leading the retail brands. And so, you know, our members are typically the ones that are involved in shaping the future and really the ones that are spearheading where we're going within the retail industry.
Yeah. Let me ask you a question. So coming up, I remember a time when NRF and RILA both had their own unique individual constituencies. NRF people did not go to RILA. RILA people did not go to NRF. That's just the way it was. And that's why, as a solution provider, we had to make sure we went to every conference because we wanted to get FaceTime, right? I'm finding now as I go to the conferences, and maybe you can shed some light on this, but there's a lot of crossover now. I see a lot of people coming to your conference specifically for that leadership type training.
I'll tell you, you know, it is definitely over the time. It's definitely, has evolved, I'll say. And it's nothing to the other trade association or us, nothing that we had predicated or specified out there. It was just interesting because retail leaders, they either went to one side or the other. And like you're saying now, you see teams coming together at both of the events and supporting both of the events across the industry. They get different levels of content. They get different levels of engagement on either side. So I think at the end of the day, there still is some uniqueness, but we are seeing people cross-collaborate across both trade associations.
Yeah, I think that, sorry to interrupt there, Johnny, but I think that, you know, again, obviously there's different ones, Khris, as you know, and you represent RILA, and obviously I've been involved with RILA, as you know, for a long time, right? Been on different committees, the Crimes Against Business Committee for years, and, you know, worked with Lisa Labruno on several different initiatives over the years. And I think they're all great. I think that it's nice too, when it comes to like, especially legislative type stuff, even though there's different groups, you're all promoting the same things, right? I remember a time where that wasn't always the case. I know there was a couple things where there was some conflict between the organizations on some legislation in the past, specifically. And I feel like now, especially with the pending, the name has escaped me now, Chris, I'm sure you know what it is, but the current federal bill that's being proposed on
The Cork bill,
ORC.
the Cork Act.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
you go. There you
Yep.
go. Thank you. In my defense, I just got back from UK and I'm still on UK time. But I know that I feel like everybody's all in. They're all pushing for the same thing, right? Everybody's supportive of it, which is great to see. As an industry. So
Yeah, at the end of the day, the bad guy is the bad guy. And the retailers are just looking for support. And so, this is how we work together to advance the industry.
So, Chris, from an AP perspective, and the title of the conferences and the title of your team has changed a number of times over the year. It was loss prevention, now it's asset protection. What does your team really focus on? What is your primary mission from an asset protection LP perspective in the industry?
Yeah, so when you look at RILA and RILA's asset protection portfolio, our scope here is to really listen to our members and really help support them as they are tackling challenges each and every day. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but within my portfolio at RILA, I have the Asset Protection Leaders Council, which are the number ones. Those are the AP leaders of our member organizations that sit on that council. I also have a workplace safety committee, which is interesting because the workplace safety committee, I always tell people this, you have two sets of practitioners. You have OSHA and regulatory compliance practitioners, and then you have those that support workplace violence and other events that happen within the workplace within that group. And then you heard Tony talk about the Crimes Against Businesses group earlier. We have CAB. That team is, I call them the super sleuths. Those are those chief investigators that are looking at how do we avoid the next major event or compromise to the brand or to the organization. And if we can't avoid it, how do we manage through it? And then how do we coach and train and catch the bad actors that are causing habitual or larger offenses or things like that? And so when you think about where our focus is going back to what I started with, is listening to our members. What is top of mind for them? Where's the main priorities for them? And then ultimately giving them or equipping them with the tools, the tactics, and most importantly, the connections and collaboration that really help drive their business and make them successful leaders.
So here's
Hey,
the
Chris,
question.
one of the sorry, Johnny, just to dive in a little, say a couple of the initiatives you guys have going on now that I know Vibrant Communities Initiative, VCI, has been going on for a while, and we're participating now in that and pilot number 2, or I don't know if it's a pilot anymore, I guess at this point, but in Kansas City, New York. And so, as you know, obviously with my background, super excited about that initiative. And now moving into, and again, to your point about, what is it that your members want, right? And gift cards have always been a major, major challenge. Johnny, you can attest to this from our days, even way back when at CVS, right? The different scams, the elderly scams, the phone call scams, the tampering with the gift cards, you name it. And the initiative you guys have going on with that, which, fortunately we're also participating in as well. Super exciting because I remember back in the day that, God, the guy's name escapes me now, but one of the directors put together like a manual call to start discussing like the different gift card scams.
Yeah.
We had like a manual spreadsheet that we started
Wow.
tracking, the different, because, there's some groups, right? I remember one, I wanted to say it was like out of a prison or something in Alabama. I remember it actually a case that closed, but the stuff that obviously we're able to do now with technology is huge in that regard, but you guys kind of leading that initiative. And I know that came from the members, right? That they were saying, hey, we need help with this issue, right, that we're having. And so super excited to be a part of that as well. And again, stuff that's going to help all the retailers out there. And quite frankly, even not your members, right, Chris?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
the more that you said earlier, right? I mean, we're all trying to get the bad guys, out of the picture, right? However we can do that. So again, super excited about those two initiatives as well. I know Lisa is more spearheading those now, from my understanding, with the alignment changes and stuff, but super excited about both of those programs.
Yeah, it's been super fun over the last 2 years that I've been here with RILA.
Has it been 2 years, Chris?
Can you believe that?
My Lord have mercy.
2
Wow.
years. I know time flies, right, when you're having fun. But over the last 2 years, we even, like you just mentioned, some of the alignment changes. So, the AP portfolio, so those communities and the interaction with our members, and that front line with the members is in that's what I do here at RILA. And then, we spun off recently and started the RILA Communities Foundation, which now houses the relationships or houses those initiatives of the Vibrant Community Initiative, along with the Gift Card Alliance Initiative, and then also supports our collaboration with IACP and with the National District Attorneys Association. And that's the side that Lisa leads on that side. But Lisa and I are still connected at the hip. So we're still talking with those practitioners out there. We're still engaging them. Our work is different, but still very relative to each other. And that's like you said, that's where we have our ear to the ground, listening to what the members need, and then reacting and challenging solution providers like you guys on things to be able to bring back to the retailers to make their jobs easier and to make their outcomes or drive profitability for them at the end of the day.
Tell you, man, you can certainly do worse. You can do a lot worse than having Lisa LeBruno as a mentor / partner. Right?
I'll tell you, great person to have beside me. So.
Hey, quick question. So going back to your comment earlier about RILA's main goal being to listen to the constituency, to listen to your retailers. I know that retailers, and I don't want to ask you to, I'm not going to put you on the spot and have you mention anybody and call anybody out or anything like that. I won't do that. But just generally speaking, I know retailers demand a lot, but they don't like to share a lot. So do you find that you're being given a lot of topics without a lot of supporting detail, or are you presenting the topic and asking folks, where does, how do these focus points, like the Vibrant Communities Initiative, how do those begin?
So it all comes with conversation with the members. This is where that one-on-one dialogue, where those personal connections with different retailers, where you're getting in front of them and really able to ask them, like, so what's your CEO's top of mind? Like, what's he or she challenging you with? What's the board challenging you with? And then coming back and saying strategically, if I was able to find a way for X, or if I was able to pull together Y, would that make a difference for you at the end of the day? And so those are those conversations that we have at RILA with our members. Will our members go into a room and say, hey, I talked to Khris and I told him X, Y, and Z? Maybe not, but that's where my voice, that's where Lisa's voice, that's where we advocate for their best interests and are able to start up these initiatives just like the ones you mentioned.
Yeah. I could see a world, and we're going to talk a little bit more about total loss later on, as you can imagine. So I don't want to get too far ahead, but I can see a world where as you continue to evolve the total retail loss mindset and retailers start to really glean onto that, as they jump on board, I could see a world where we start to see CEOs, or at the very least SVP, COO types from operations, starting to show up at your asset protection conferences and starting to learn that loss prevention can be more than just a necessary cost center. In the right environment, we can turn it into a profit driver, or at least a profit enhancer.
Yeah, you think about it. When we're gone out of that mindset that, and I know you said we're going to talk about that later, but we're going to jump in now. We're gone out of that mindset about, the asset protection guys are just the guys that put handcuffs on people and walk them back to a dark room somewhere. That's gone. Asset protection, loss prevention leaders, they're business leaders. They're business owners. And so that's where they have to have that mindset of looking at the total business, which, a piece of that business is that bad actor, but the larger piece of that is, where am I losing it because of damages? Where am I losing it because of operational inefficiencies across the board? Where am I losing it because of cash inefficiencies or just broken processes across the board? Because those broken processes and those operational inefficiencies can actually cost the retailer a lot more than that guy that stole a t-shirt or two every other week. And so that's where, it goes back to something I said it's probably been more than a couple years now, but I said, you look at your shrink program as a bucket with a whole bunch of holes in it. And you got to start looking at, how do I start plugging these holes? And as you start to plug some, the water comes out of other holes. And so you got to start looking at the total business and saying, all right, how do I be a total business leader? And how do I look at this and approach this where I can not just plug holes, but I can start putting some stop gaps on things, and I can embark on different team members to help support this mantra as well, to be able to take this initiative forward. And that's what total retail loss really is.
That's hilarious. It's hilarious, Tony, that Khris uses the holes in the bucket. I use, it's a balloon. And when you start to squeeze on one side of the balloon, the other side of the balloon just starts to expand, and it's a never ending fight, right?
That's it.
Well, Tony, we're on total retail loss, so let's stay here and screw the script. We'll get back to that later.
Yeah, no, on that note, obviously I agree with what you guys are saying. And certainly I've been on more of the investigative side the majority of my career, right? And I think that the challenge with that is that, from a financial aspect, Chris, you just use it as an example, right? From a financial aspect, you certainly RC, I think we'd all agree, has gotten worse over the years, right? And there's various reasons for that. I firmly believe, by the way, that the biggest reason was COVID, and because more people shop online now than they did before, and that's where the bulk of stolen product ends up. That's just my own opinion, having dealt in that space. But my point is that it's great that we can delve into all the other things and we can work with operators and obviously business mindset, et cetera. However, whenever anything happens, right? So like the shit hits the fan, right? If you will,
Yeah.
LP, AP, risk, profit, whatever we're calling ourselves or whatever, we're going to be the ones looked at, right? And the one thing that quite frankly, it's not a big, huge concern of mine, but I feel like that we're pushing more and more and more towards the business side, that we're almost in a sense losing some of that investigative ability. I think part of it too is this technology. I think that a lot of it is, you got all these tools now. And all of us on this call can attest to the fact that, remember a time when there weren't cameras, or the cameras, they were pointless because you could review the VHS tape and not be able to even tell if it was a person or a, camel on the camera,
Yes.
right? I mean, it literally.
Right. No idea.
But so I think that I say that because I think that it's great and we obviously need to move towards that business side, but I still think that we need to maintain that unique ability that LP and AP folks have that others do not. And sometimes I get concerned that we have departments or teams that are so much business that they don't have enough people or the personnel to still handle some of that other stuff that comes up, say the shit hits the fan kind of scenario and they have to deal with it. I'm just curious as to these are just opinions of mine, obviously, but
They're wrong. They're wrong opinions, but we'll talk about that later. We'll get into that in a second. Chris, I'd love to hear your response to what
I'm
Tony
going to
just
put that
said.
disclaimer about Tony's opinion. Those are statements of Tony Shepard. Those are only his opinions and not the opinions of anybody else. We'll leave that there. But what I will tell you is it's been unique. What I've seen over the industry, just like Tony, you and I, we've been in the industry probably same amount of time, somewhere around there. You got more hair than me. I don't figure out how that worked out.
it's white though in your defense.
I got you. But what I will say is that, investigation. So after COVID, it was all about safety. How do you keep the shopping environment safe? And so, that was the first thing out of COVID and it wasn't even safe from events. It was safe for public health. So, so we were jumping through hoops and, what we saw within the retail communities, we saw the AP leaders step up and say, hey, we got cameras, we got tracking, we can do this, we can do that, we can do all these things in the effort of protecting public health. And then after that, what came up next was bad actors said, well, hey, they only got 3 associates working, there's no customers in there, we could start robbing these places. And so then we saw these aggressive events start to kick in and aggressive events start to happen, after we started to see some ease of public health requirements post-COVID. And then after that, AP said, okay, well, now we got to start dealing with these events. We got to start looking at how do we combat some of these ORC events that are happening? How do we combat some of these guys that are stealing our goods and putting it on online marketplaces and getting, if not the same amount, more than we sell within our own stores? Then they started going down that road. I think we're at that pivot point now, Tony. What I'll say is that I see a lot of retailers and I hear a lot of our members talking about they're reinvesting back into their investigative strategies. They're seeing that it's no longer internal, external. It's a 360 now because they got individuals that are purposely going to employ at retailers with the intent to do harm and the intent to learn the system, the to do different things. And so that is where I see retailers looking at it. Now they might not tag it like, we're old school, Tony. We like to have our internal, external and the what if bucket. Like we like to have those classifications out there, but they are looking at these as more collusion happening out there and those events going after that. And I see people in that investigative posture now, even to the point of, separating out their teams from one side of their team running all data analytics and dealing with the paperwork issues and quickly kind of saying, okay, let's slap Khris on the hand. Let's deal with that over here. But on the flip side, when Khris goes off the rails and starts pushing stuff out the back door, that's a different group that's dealing with that individual on that side. So I do see that coming back into the wheelhouse of the teams. And I see that focus happening across the industry.
Tony and I go back and forth about this all the time. And philosophically, we're a lot closer than we appear. I understand his perspective, and I think he at least pretends to understand my perspective or care. But I'm kind of with what you just said, Khris. And my concern is kind of the opposite of what Tony just explained. I feel like we've got too many people that are still stuck in the old way of doing things, and not enough people looking at the operational causation of loss. I think the three of us, we grew up in a time where really loss prevention was catching bad guys. But if I know all of you on the phone, I think that we all at least had enough sense to know that it was more than that. And, the total retail loss study kind of put a label on it. It gave it a title. It gave it a concept. But I think that's something I've been after, and I know Tony's been after for some time. What do you think? Here's my question. I'm kind of working my way around it. I'm sorry. But in doing investigations, especially looking through data, we would find a lot of issues that were clearly driving loss to the company, but they weren't necessarily theft related. And I know that back then I would hand it off to my operating partners, and the response was, Johnny, stay in your lane. Go catch your bad guys. We'll handle the operations. As you started to introduce the total retail loss concept as RILA, and I know that was before you came on board, but you're really in the thick of it now. How are you coaching LP/AP folks to get around that thought process, to build the rapport and credibility with their teams?
I would say that the conversation has changed. So let me take this file and hand it over to the operator, and the operator go do something about it. The conversation has changed to the point of, the APLP leader is seen as that business leader now, that their elevation in how their senior leadership looks at them. And so when they are going through, and I know like in my previous role, I would meet every week with the CEO of the company. And in that conversation, we talked about my area of responsibilities, the areas that I own within the company, but then I also talked about areas that I wanted to be on his radar. So, and those on the radar conversations were conversations of, hey, not my lane, but in the supply chain org, and this was, I didn't own transportation. I did have DC, I had the DC, but on the transportation costs, the areas where you would flag, this is an excessive transportation expense. We're processing damages, we're sending them back. We're eating this expense twice or three times over because of the way that we're processing this. And if I had a better solution to be able to cut that cost, would you be open to listen to it? And so, and when you approach it that way, it's like, okay, well, if you don't think saving money is a great thing for the company, then great, then we'll hold hands and we'll go down together. But if present an idea that sounds great, and ultimately you're able to take that idea, CEO, senior leader, able to take that idea and take it back to another part of the business. And in my case, transportation was owned by another one of the companies under my former parent company. That's where he said, yeah, heck yeah, I want to take that back. Heck yeah, I want to talk about that because I'm getting charged for that. And so, and that approach is where I've seen members across the APLP community right now get the biggest wins. They're getting the biggest support because they approach it with not a go do your job piece, but they say, hey, I'm trying to be a partner. At the end of the day, the P&L sits on my review just like it sits on yours. And so let's figure out how to sway the basis points in the favorable direction on that.
I think right along that same thought process, I have a theory as well, and I think it marries well with what you just explained. My thought is that we as an industry have been unable to properly communicate our ROI back to the business. I think it all comes down to that. It's always been, these are the number of cases we caught, and this is the dollar value that they admitted to. Great. How much did you save me though? Well, I guess I could come up with a calculation that if I didn't stop them now and they continue through the end of the year and they moved at this pace, then you talk to some of the solution providers that were out. And I'm not talking about anybody specific, but just in general, you'd say, okay, great. I'm going to buy your EBR platform or your business intelligence tool. What is the ROI? And the response is always, well, we're going to help you get more cases and we're going to help you get them faster. Well, more than what and faster than what? And how do I take that message upstairs?
Yeah.
So do you think with the advent of all this new data and AI technology, and there are some companies like Think LP, and I'm sure others, that are really focused on specific dollar values that we're going to be able to help the LP team put back to the gross margin line on the P&L, whether it's shrink or markdowns or no loss or damages or what have you. Do you think that being armed with that makes everyone's life a little bit easier? And if so, how do we spread that message across the industry?
I 100% think yes, that makes it easier. I'll tell you, and I forgive anybody that's worked under my leadership across the industry. I'm sorry. I'll say that now. And if you are working at a company where I used to perform at, I'm sorry there as well too. Because one thing that I always, when I went into my senior leader and talked about any initiative that I wanted to do, roll out, change, pivot, or anything like that, I always attached an ROI on what what that return is going to look like. And it was a 1 year, 3 year, 5 year, depending upon how big the project was. But there was an ROI attached to it in my proposal to be able to spend that funding. And for the teams that reported to me, I required them the same thing, even all the way down to added members of their teams. They had to put an ROI. What is that going to get us back at the end of the day, whether it's a shortage reduction or better processes or whatever it's going to bring back or yield at the end. I think that mindset is one of the biggest ways to evolve from a security guy to a business leader. Because
And let's look at some of the guys out there, right?
yeah,
The Paul Jekyls, the
come
Scott
on,
Glenns,
yeah,
the Mark Stindies. These are guys that understand communicating that ROI message
that's it.
above.
That's it. Yeah, when you
Yeah.
start to speak that and you're walking into a room and you're saying, "Hey, I'm asking for $1 million, or I'm asking for $1.5 million. I want to roll out. I want to get rid of this and go with that." And you say that this is what I plan on bringing back to this scenario. This is the ROI that I'm going to deliver in a year, 3 year, 5 year, whatever the integration process is going to be. That's the hook, because at the end of the day, that's what they hold you accountable to do. And if you're saying I'm going to get you a point back or half a point back to the P&L, hey, like, sign me up.
Tony, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with everything you're saying. I do want to, I know we jumped into it, which I'm not surprised, by the way, with 3 of us on a call that we would do that. But I do want to take a step back, if you guys don't mind, and just go back a little bit. We always like to talk, Chris, about, how people kind of got to where they are, right? And and look at your LinkedIn profile and whatnot and see that. But, like, we all have interesting stories, right? Like, I didn't know what loss prevention was and I kind of fell into it. And, Johnny did know, and he's got a little bit of a different story, right? And I'm just curious as to, and I know you've done other roles, not just LP, like
Yeah.
in the operations and retail as well. And so just going back, like, I guess the question is how did you grow up in the industry? Like, how did it start? And, did you decide on this, or when did you decide, how did you end up where you are now, basically? Because I always
How'd
find
you
that.
end up a screwed up LP guy like the rest of us?
So it's funny because there are a couple of AP leaders out there that have debated this topic over the years. This should give them a chuckle, but I originally I worked in arson. So I worked in arson. I was on the fire and in the county I worked in. You were trained on the fire side, trained on the police side. And I got hurt on the job. And I was out for almost a year. I had got hurt pretty bad. Went into a fire, got burnt up, and broke my leg and did some things like that. So it was a tough.
No, hold on.
Yeah.
We can't gloss over that.
Just a
This
few.
is like some heroic shit we're talking about. Can you, not to
Yeah.
take you down negative
Yeah.
memory lane, but can you give us any kind of the story? What happened?
Yeah. So it was a house fire and a working job. The event transpired in a neighborhood. So in this specific county at that time, where it's probably still the same today, 60% volunteer, 40% paid fire department in this county. And one of the biggest things is that in this specific county there's a disproportion of volunteers in minority communities versus non-minority communities. And so when this fire banged out, there was it came out as a house fire. It quickly went to a 2 alarm and then ultimately escalated to a 3. There were 3 people trapped in the property. And when the 4th unit arrived, I think there was only about 2 people that was able to go into the fire itself. So you have firefighters can go in, and then you had other individuals that they call them red hats or probationary individuals that cannot go into the fire just yet. They haven't been trained to go into the fire just yet. And so in that event, I think I was maybe the 6th or 7th unit that came. And normally in my role, I don't come into the fire was out. I had already kind of put the heroic stuff to the side for a moment and had smartened up a little bit, but I wasn't too far away. And when I heard the people trapped, and it wasn't too, like I said, a neighborhood that I know very well because I know people reside in this neighborhood. And so when I got there, I saw citizens going into the structure, into this house, trying to save the mother and her children in this property. And so, to me, I said, look, we got rules, we have bylaws we have to follow, we have rules, RIC teams that we have to abide by, but all rules were out the window at that time. And so, disarmed, suited up, and we went in. And ultimately, at the end, we made rescues, building collapse. A couple of us were trapped. They got us out. I'm still here today to talk about it. But, real touching to me is that there were members of that family that did not make it. And others might not have made it if we didn't step in and take the actions that we did. And so, I'm very proud to have said that we did what we could in that situation, and we reacted, and we didn't allow rules or regulations to hold us back from doing what our heart told us to do in that
I see
situation.
you in a whole new light, man.
Yeah.
That is really impressive stuff.
So, but yeah, after that, I said I had applied to NYPD. So I said I was leaving. I said a lot of stuff went on after the fact with that agency. And so I said I'm done. I can't work here. So I said, let me go to NYPD. That was is in my heart, and I'm sorry if somebody might tune off now, but one of the most respected law enforcement agencies in the world. And so I said, I'm going to apply and I'm going to go to NYPD. And I made that choice. I got accepted into a recruit class, but it wasn't until the fall. So this was at the time, it was coming just about early let's call it the spring season. I wasn't set up to go into the fall season to the academy. And so I was bored. I'm a young guy. Bored. I said, don't judge me here, Tony. You probably remember these days. I'm looking at a newspaper and here's a classified ad, and it says plainclothes undercover security. And I'm like, sign me
Hell
up.
yeah.
I don't have to carry my gun. Look, I can do this for the summer and then pack up this stuff in a U-Haul truck and head on up to New York. Let's do this. And so I applied. This gentleman, if he watches this, he'll know who he is. Gracious enough to give me my first go. Never knew anything about asset protection, loss prevention, or anything in this industry. He taught me everything. He taught me how to make shoplifting cases. He taught me how to deploy internal investigations. He taught me how to run cameras. I mean, this guy was one of the most hands-on and most innovative leaders that I had in my portfolio. And he showed me the ropes, and that's what got me into asset protection. And when the recruit class came around, I decided to give my notice. When I did that, they said, hey, no, guy, you got a future in this space. We've been thinking about something else for you. Quickly started moving to different roles and responsibilities, and what I thought was going to be just something for the summer actually lasted for 27 years with Macy. So
Yep, that's crazy. So you started in the business kind of on a whim. You stuck around for 27 years. Clearly, your first couple of years in the business had to be alluring enough to spark your interest. What was the training like that you went through? I mean, I remember my initial detective training back in 1992. It sounds like you owe a lot to this one gentleman.
Dude.
Was that your training? Was it all just a dump from this guy's head, or was there a formal training program that really got you interested?
So the company did have a training program. However, look, I give it. He was, and probably still is, one of the most maniacal trainers out there. This guy was super intense, and there were many days that I did not like him at all. There were many days I was like, this is for the birds. I cannot wait until the fall. But I will say that what he instilled and the way he trained and the way he pushed was what turned me out to be who I am today.
I think it's interesting, Chris, that, again, obviously my back a little similar in nature, store detective job. It was, a guy in my college class, biology class, so not even a criminal justice class. Like, oh, you should go. I need a part-time job, right? Go be a store detective. I didn't know what that was, et cetera. But I think it's interesting that so many of us, kind of fell into the job, liked it, moved up and experienced different things and obviously turned out, to be a career for us, where nowadays, because of, different organizations, right? Like I'll use Loss Prevention Foundation as the primary one for me. I just recently did a LinkedIn post on this very topic, right? Talking about how I think that it's given credibility to the industry, to the profession, right? Because if you recall back then, it really wasn't considered much of a profession, right? Whereas now you've got folks that are going to college and they're fresh out of college and they're actually going into LP, right? Like as a career, like that's a choice. They didn't they're not falling into it. They're making that choice to do that, which the evolution to me is just every time I think about it, just amazed at where it was, back in the early 90s to where it is today. And the fact that it is more of a career, and the fact that there were so many folks involved in making that happen, right? I mean, some of the names Johnny actually mentioned earlier on the call, that kind of pushed for, the LP Foundation and the certification processes and all that. And obviously you've got, I'll use Wicklander as well, right? You've got that, all these different, again, I know my training, I didn't have somebody that was at hands-on. My training was not good. It was Montgomery Ward, and there really wasn't much training at all. But it was, hey, you got to stuff. But it just is amazing to me every time I think about it. The what it was back then to what it is now is just like no comparison.
No comparison.
No comparison at all. And I'm not saying, I mean, obviously there were fun times back then
Yeah.
as well, right? I mean, some of the we had to investigate was, to be a little bit creative at times, and those were exciting times. And there's all kinds of stories, right? That I know I tell a lot of them on
Yeah.
LinkedIn. I've been doing that for quite some time. But again, it is. I think it's great that it's evolved to where it is today, and a lot of people, certainly made that happen, and certainly respect those individuals. It is nice to see college students. We have a, recent hire actually that went through and was actually a part of. I think it was with Dick's, I believe. John. It was like a college student. Anyway, it's just amazing to see folks coming straight from college and like choosing, to be in this
Yeah.
industry. It's a career, which is nice.
Tony, to that point, when I sit back and just ponder over the past, the fact that we have LPQ, we have LPC, we have these designations, we have the CFI from WZ, you have those various designations. Goes hand in hand with that elevation of security guy with a radio and handcuffs running through the store to that business leader who is looking at that total business, but also professionally changing themselves. So you think about, LPQ, LPC, like it doesn't just teach you about shoplifting tactics. Like you're learning P&L, you're learning, the merchants are looking at goods at retail or at COGS. Like you're learning all these different skill sets that make you a more valuable leader at the end of the day. And like Johnny mentioned, those pioneer leaders that are out there, like those are the individuals that really were influential in pushing that and making it what it is today. That's what drives our credibility in this space. That's what, when there's an issue on Capitol Hill and they're saying, hey, we need an expert. That's what gives us that credibility to be able to walk in as that expert and to be able to speak and lead from that space.
Yeah. So, Chris, along those same lines, I'm looking at I was stalking your LinkedIn profile a little bit, just trying to get an idea of some of the stuff that we'd want to talk about. I do that a lot. I'm on your profile a lot. I don't know. I'm just weird that way. But I noticed that you had some transition from LP into ops and then from ops back to LP. Can you talk about some of the learnings that benefited you when you became an operator, knowing what you knew about loss prevention, and then ultimately how being an operator helped you take the next step when you went back to loss prevention?
I was having a conversation with my mentor, and my mentor was a chief operating officer. And so I was having a conversation with him, and I was picking his brain. I said, I want to continue to grow. I want to grow. There's roles I want. There's different places I want to be. And he said, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you want to grow, guy. But like he said, when you look at your career, you look at your resume, you've only been in the retail space. You've only been in asset protection. You've only that's all the space you've been in. You haven't experienced retail at a whole. And so I said, well, how do I do this? And he said, well, it's going to be a challenge. And he said, but one of the biggest challenges you can do is to think about becoming a store manager. And I was like, what?
He suckered you.
Why in the heck would I ever want to be a store manager?
That job sucks. That's
But
a lot of work, man. That's real work.
That's real work. But let me tell you this. Let me tell you this, though. As a store manager, I learned how to run the business. I learned every piece of running that business because as a store manager, I give it up to all the store managers out there. You are the CEO of your building. You run every aspect of that building. And so at that time, granted, I said, okay, I'll consider this. It's the one area I haven't been in. And I do want to do bigger things. And so, and I don't have all those skill sets. And so I said, cool. And so here I am in my naive mind. I'm a regional VP of asset protection. In my naive mind, I'm saying, cool. Or actually, I had operations under my wing there as well, and DC under my wing at that time. I said, okay, cool. They'll give me a small store. I'll get a $20 million store. This will be great. It won't be a lot of work, Johnny. It'll be a walk in the park. I'll be in at 8, out at 4, and it'll be great.
No.
This will be outstanding. Well, joke on Chris, because during that specific year, the company I was with, we had been doing some growth work initiative on different stores. And during that cycle, I think the first year we did 6 stores in the company, and then the following year we doubled down, and I think we did 12, or we might have slid in a +1 and did 13 that following year. Well, that following year, the largest growth store initiative was going to happen in the region that I was in. And so I spent probably a good 8 to 9 months working as the leader of operations, working on this project. It was a 2-store project. And I got to tell you, the one store was a main store, and the other store was another ancillary store that I worked on the project. But the ancillary store got the most amount of growth store funding for remodel, rehab, and everything that was going to happen in the store. And I'm like, this is great. All right, check me out. Send me to my $20 million store. I'm ready to go. And when the time came, guess what store I got as my first store manager role? That store that just spent all that time drafting the plans and working with our construction crew and facilities on all the work that was going to happen in that store over the next year. And so I got to lead one of the largest growth store investment initiatives at a store as their store manager, with a 27-man management team, dual building, looking at about $80 million in volume, and
No pressure.
a little bit over $1 million in growth dollars that went into that project. So it was a fun year. But I will tell you, it took me to what I call the best retail university. I've learned so much because, from all the work that had to happen, to all the visits that happened, to preparing for the CEO of the company to come, to doing all of that as that CEO of that building, was a different place than I ever had as a regional VP of AP and operations and different roles like that.
Is there a tougher job in retail than store manager? If there is, I don't know it.
I don't know it.
Chris, I think you said that, you did that. And obviously, I know Johnny prefaced the question with, what did you learn from that helped you in AP and that? And I think that, folks that have done those stretch assignments, I hear it from some of the, the titans in the industry, if you will, that have been around for a while, always mention that, when you take on those, like, you do learn so much. It's different to, you as an LPAP person, you may have like an idea of what they're dealing with, right? But until you actually are doing some of those things, you really don't grasp, the significance of that. And then having that knowledge and then being back in LPAP gives you just a completely different, perspective on how to handle those things. And I always tell people, I know that, I'll give Stephanie Hoover from LP Magazine a shout out here, because she's been trying to push people to do these little mentoring clips where you do like a little 1-minute mentor or whatever thing. And my first one I did was literally was basically saying, step out of your comfort zone, be willing to take on other tasks, because it just gives you a completely different perspective on what folks are dealing with. I think sometimes in LPAP, we're not as sympathetic or as understanding as we should be on the work that the store managers, the district managers, and all those other folks have to do. And I think it just gives you a really good perspective.
Hey, speaking of perspective, let's shift gears a little bit. So it's always been my perspective that you can learn a lot about somebody by asking them the most ridiculous questions in the world.
Boy.
And we learned a lot about our friend Red Asher during our last conversation. We asked him what his favorite song was, and that question's coming, by the way. We asked him what his guilty pleasure song. And Rhett was kind enough to admit that it was the theme song from a young girl's cartoon that really got him motivated to get up and get at him every day. And we also learned that he's an antiquer, which is kind of a cool hobby that most senior citizens really get into.
Yeah. That's true.
So let me throw a couple out at you here, and Tony, if you got any, just of course, jump in. But first question, favorite, and it doesn't, and I know you may have a bunch, but let's just go guilty pleasure song. Yeah. What's the one song that you don't really want people to know about, but I'm asking you anyway?
So if you know me, you might know that this is my song, but the title of the song is All I Do Is Win. And that song gets me going. It gets me in the right mindset. It might be played at least, 2 to 3 times a week, but that is the song. I just need the hook to that
I can
song.
hear it right now, Chris. I can
See?
hear it. You
Yep,
just said
see?
it. I can hear it. I'm getting into it now. I
That's
can
it.
feel it. I can
That's it.
feel it.
Gets me going every time. Even when I don't feel like I'm winning, I hit that and let's go.
No cartoons, no theme songs or anything?
No, no cartoons. I won't. So no cartoons, but I do have a 2-year-old. So if you ever start playing a little Miss Rachel in the far distance, I probably will start humming the tune. So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's my song.
I think for me and my kids, it was Superhero Squad.
I got you. Okay.
I don't even know if y'all remember that. Okay, movie. What
Movie.
kind of movies you like? Or do you like movies? Are you a movie guy?
I am a movie guy, so I love movies. My wife and I, that's probably a guilty pleasure together is movies and concerts. But don't laugh because I am so stereotypical. SWAT. That's my all-time favorite movie. Is SWAT. I love that movie.
Colin Farrell SWAT?
Yes, the original, not the remakes. The original.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
all-time favorite.
a pretty niche selection, man. You had
Yeah,
to go into the box for that one.
I love that
Wow. What do you do outside of work? Keep yourself busy.
a lot. I'm involved a lot in my community. I do a lot of outreach in the community and things like that. If you know me, you know this, but this might shock you a little bit. It's probably the reason why I don't have any hair. But I have 5 daughters. So I have 5
Holy
daughters.
shit. You have 5? Wait, do
5.
you only have 5 children?
I have 5 children and I have
And
5
all 5 are daughters?
5 daughters.
Wow.
My God.
And they go from 2 to 23. So yeah. So that
You poor man. Well, blessed on one hand,
bless.
but poor man on the other.
I feel you, Chris. I got 5, although I've got 3 girls and 2 boys. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I have 2 girls.
the girls are they're
Yeah.
they're a lot. They're a
They're a
lot. As a matter of fact, I actually just got back. I mentioned earlier, just got back from the UK yesterday.
Yep.
Still in the UK time zone, and my wife is a teacher,
That's right.
and she's teaching high school now, so she had to leave earlier.
Yeah.
So I took my 6-year-old to her first day of school today, actually, and then dropped off my other 2 girls. But yeah, that's 5 is woo. That's yeah, good for you, Chris.
No, I
3
look.
girls is plenty. So
Any of them want to follow in dad's footsteps yet?
It's interesting that when the twins were younger, they were like, "We want to be cops. This is what we want to do. We want to be cops. We want to be cops." And so now they have their own place in place where they want to go. It's interesting. You know, my degrees in criminal justice. I have a master's in psychology. I do have a daughter that wants to be a child psychologist. So we'll see what happens there. I just whenever I hear these things, I just see dollar signs start popping up, and I don't I
Yeah.
slowly pass out afterwards. But yeah.
I'm right there with you. One too, Chris. One of my daughters now wants to be I don't even know the right technical name for it, but it's meteorologist, or she wants to go to some college in Denver. And by the way, the whole career thing. I don't know if you do this or not, but my wife and I still do the little boards where they write out the board. You know, you
Board.
take your picture and it's like, what do they want to be
What
when
do you
they
want to be? Yep.
so, yeah, I had been out. I was in the UK with my younger son. Actually, it was a soccer trip, football
Nice.
trip, right?
Football.
UK football. But anyway, I got back, and so I was doing the pictures. And my wife had to leave for school, and so they had already written them out. I took the pictures, and I hadn't even had a chance to read them.
Right.
I'm looking at the pictures, and my oldest daughter is 13, and she's the overachiever of the bunch.
Okay.
And so she lists the careers that she wants, and she's got the rock meteorologist, more weather. I don't know, escaping me now, but like a engineer of rocks,
got you.
whatever that is. I don't know.
Okay.
Geologist?
There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Johnny.
Yes.
Lord have mercy.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you. And then it had, on top of that, it was that there was something else. And then she listed Army, and I was in the
Oh.
Army. And that's the
Okay.
first time. And
Yeah.
she never said one word to me about it.
Lovely.
Still haven't talked to her because I took the picture and I didn't see until afterwards that she wrote that on a board. So I had to talk to her about that later today. But
Yeah.
it's sorry, I digress. It's just
Good for her.
today, so it's always a big deal. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's huge.
So Khris Hamlin has a
Yes, sir.
habit of, or at least used to have a habit of running into buildings that were on fire to help people.
Yeah.
He's a proud girl dad of 5 girls and at least one set of twins, which test patience that I can't even imagine. So I'm afraid, Chris, that people are going to come out of this call thinking you're a pretty good dude. So
They might.
let's do what we can to at least tarnish that image a little bit.
Sounds like
Okay.
a plan to me.
Yeah. So we've all got 1 or 2 or 20 or 30 stories about when we were in loss prevention, something maybe didn't go right, something embarrassing happened, something that you kind of can look back on and laugh over a beer now. Can you share one of those stories with us? Something that shows that Khris is fallible to a
Yeah.
certain extent?
Look, I got tons. We could be here all day. I'll tell you one of the things that was one of the ones that's a classic for me, and I still kick myself for this one. Classic. I was a district director of AP, and I was visiting one of my stores one day for a store visit, and we stopped a shoplifter. I did the escort back. My team was doing the paperwork because, of course, as a district, you don't do no paperwork anymore. That's the team.
No.
Team does paperwork.
That's the perk.
I don't even know how to get into the computer anymore.
Well, hell, you tell these kids now that we had to handwrite our reports. They don't understand all that.
No, but yeah, so they're doing the paperwork. Now this is surprisingly in this store, the AP office was large. So you had, and I don't know why, hopefully they changed this, but the bench was like across the room, and then the computer to do the stuff was only across the other room. So I did the escort back, I pat down the suspect. We put him on the bench. I don't have him tied down to the bench. They've been cooperative. And so I'm standing there as the witness, and they're starting to get on the computer to start typing up the report. And they asked me a question because I don't know, something in the report. Of course, they're nervous because you got your district there. And this is like one of the hourly AP detectives. So this is not even the manager. So they're like, crap, like I got to make sure I'm hitting all these buttons right, doing everything. So they asked me a question about in our case management system, some question they asked me to look at with them. And so I go over and I'm looking, and I have the slightest idea. Like I don't know what we're doing in here. I'm just like, put their name, address, date of birth, and you can go fill all this stuff out. And so I'm all into it, looking with them. And all of a sudden I hear somebody say, "See ya." And I look up and the guy has the door open and he was in the middle and he was out. He was gone. And of course our AP office was right by an exit door, and he busted out the exit door. And by the time, now I'm now out the door, out looking outside, and this guy is clear across the parking lot.
Looking outside. Looking outside at full speed, I would imagine. Let's go back and analyze a couple pieces of this story, shall we? Because now I could almost guess what year it happened in. First of all, we brought the suspect. We have an office, right, that has enough space between the bench and the desk so that the shoplifter can get a running start at you. Love
By
that.
the way, we're all set up that way, Khris. The bench is far from the computer. Every office. I've never been. I don't know why.
What is happening here?
I don't either. Then we patted the suspect down, but I don't think anybody's doing it anymore, or at least has to ask permission beforehand.
Yep.
And you considered, but ultimately decided against tying them to the bench.
Yep.
And then they ran out the back door, and you meandered out to observe where they were going.
Really? Yes. As I placed the call to 911. I forgot that piece.
Yeah. And let me guess what the report said. The report said subject attempted to flee, but was quickly subdued.
No, he got away.
Yeah,
that's the embarrassing part.
So that's what I said. That was, he got away. And I was supposed to be on the suspect. So for many, many years, and still to this day, there's a gentleman that's now a solution provider. Still to this day, if they send me an email, or if I'm presenting with them, even when I do industry stuff and I present, they will have a stick figure somewhere along the slide in a running formation as a reminder, because I have 3 running stories in my career where I've had 3 people run away from me and get away, to include an internal.
Blame the asthma. That's what I always did.
There we go. I like that.
Yeah. I can't breathe.
That's the gift that keeps on giving for that person, Khris. I mean, that's the gift that keeps on giving. I mean, you can use that story. I had an ORC investigator once that lost a GPS tracker. Lost. It went to go to attach it, and it was no longer in the car. And it turned out it had fallen out like 7 hours earlier when we were switching vehicles or something. And somebody found it, and it must have been a kid or something. It ends up in like some cemetery, and then the police department was all trying to be helpful as a winter, and they're going to go find it for us. So they had the dogs out, the dog sniff. I mean, I took pictures, and it was just the fun. I was like, wow. It was the best thing ever, in my opinion, right? Maybe not for my investigator. I won't mention her name, but literally I have pictures of like the dogs in the cemetery sniffing for this GPS. So of course I got some snapshots of that, and the next big presentation was in those spots. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Khris, would you stop a shoplifter today?
I would think about it hard. I think hard about it. The industry has changed. Back when I was actively engaging in shoplifters, it was almost like the untold rule was if I caught you, it was my point for today. Or if you got out with the goods, it was your point. You won today. And if you got on me, hey, and if I caught you, then you already knew what the what outcome is going to be. That's
And
not how.
nobody needs to die today.
Yeah, and nobody needs to die today. Correct, but that's not how it is today. Today it is the aggression of these individuals. These guys are doing everything they can not to have to come back or not to have to face the criminal justice system. So just to think, 212 people. I think it was 212 people in 23 that lost their life that were asset protection LP practitioners. Three people.
Holy cow.
And these are people without a gun, without a badge, just saying, hey, I need to talk to you about the unpaid for merchandise. And so if it was a shoplifter today, that'd be the first thought that comes in my mind is this interaction going to yield me coming home tonight or not?
I used to live for that moment when the shoplifter's on their way out of the store and they've made it through the doors. And at that point, they start to feel like they're home free. Right. And then you walk up and say, hi, I'm with loss prevention. I need to talk to you back in the building. And in 1 second, their mood goes from way up here to way down there. And you can actually watch it happen.
Yep.
I lived for that. Loved it. I don't think I could do it today.
Yeah.
It scares the hell out of me.
Yeah, I don't know if I would. Well, I haven't been in that situation, but I obviously you go shopping, right? And because you've done the job, right? Your sixth sense goes off, whatever you want to call it, right? You just know when someone. And I haven't chased anybody out of a store in a long time, but I do interject. But I do it in a more like like I just recently, not far from my house. Actually, I was in a store and I was a teenager, and immediately I knew like they were about to put something. Like it was just. The signs, right? And I was like, and I actually walked by, I was like, man, I wouldn't do that if I were, or said something basically. And of course it startled the kid and he ended up putting it down to the left or whatever. And if he had taken it, I'm sure I probably wouldn't have done anything at that point. But now I guess I try to diffuse it earlier on without doing it. But the thing I run into all the time is the internal theft situations. You're out like sporting events, the most popular where you're there and you have somebody. I had one recently at a football match, soccer as we call it here in the U.S. And it was a cashless stadium, and the cashier was like, "Well, no, if you pay $20 cash, it'll just make it $20 even." And I'm like, "No, that's okay." And so I paid my credit card, and then I left and I went back up to my seat, and I couldn't let it go. I just couldn't let it go. So I went down and I videotaped their transactions, and then I had to try to get with the security. It was just ended up ruining my whole, because I couldn't let it go. And in the end, I was like, man, I wish I could just let it go, but I couldn't let it go. And I had to address the situation. But that was obviously not a safety issue, right? Like a shoplifter would be. But it's hard to step away from something that you've, been involved in your whole career. Watch it happen.
I see myself pivoting more so towards protecting the retail worker than maybe stopping the shoplifter. Like I've been in some situations where people just get absurd, and I'm like, dude, like they're doing the best they can. They got 3 people working back there. Like, give them a break. Like, and making comments like that, and definitely advocating for them, because I know how it is across the industry right now. And so, especially like, just flying, there's so much happening at the airports, and I'm just like, dude, you don't want to do that, dude. Or if you do that, I hope you pack the lunch, because you're gonna have some problems in a minute. Having those type of conversations, just versus being so amped to want to stop a bag just because of where they are mentally right now.
Well, as soon as you started talking about advocating for the employee, I really immediately went to airlines, because I was on a recent flight that was delayed by 4 hours. And there's some people that think if they have a fit that's somehow going to change something. Like, they're going to fix the plane faster now because you jumped up and down or whatever. And just like, and it's like, these poor people are like, it's not, A, they didn't break the plane. B, they're not even the one fixing the plane.
Correct. What do you
And C, don't you want it to work?
Yeah.
Get on the plane, right? So
a working plane is beneficial when you're flying.
Yes.
Definitely beneficial. And we spent all this time with the people that need to be over there doing something else to figure out how to get us out of here.
Right.
Yep.
Right.
Well, listen, Khris, if you don't mind, we're just going to keep you a couple more minutes. I just have a couple more questions. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on where we're going from here, and then we'll let you go. Back to total loss real quick, and just a quick question. What advice do you have, being as close as you've been to this concept now, what advice do you have for the traditional loss prevention department as far as first steps to take to walk toward that total retail loss mindset and program execution?
Yeah, the first steps I'd say is you got to build a partnership. So if you don't have this, if you're an APLP leader and you don't have this today, you need to build a partnership with your CFO. Like that is number one. Building that partnership and then starting to have that conversation on from a business perspective. What's the issue here? What's the concern? How are we performing from a business perspective? And then from that CFO conversation where I say you're starting to build a momentum towards is as you're hearing your business say, we are 1% off or we're 1% away from being where we want to be at our goal, then start to work with your CFO to look at how could you yield that deficit from your business model. Is it looking at inventory differently? Is it looking at processes differently? But could you find something within your remit to be able to say, I can bring this to the table and deliver an ROI that's going to solve for that deficit that you have as a total business? And when you start to look at your business like that, you'll make your CFO and many companies out there have actually realigned to where the AP leader might actually report into the CFO. That's the starting point, I would say, to look at the business is really start to get that business mindset and then start to just dig into the numbers from there.
Yeah, it's almost like it's not enough to just add value. You have to be able to communicate the value that you're adding because it's not well known in the
Yeah.
industry.
That's it. I'll tell you this real quick too, Johnny. I sit back and I think one of the most monumental things that I had to do under my leadership was I had to take a company that was operating with legacy systems and processes. So let's just think about inventory. A lot of companies, legacy mindset. Some companies did self-checks, self-inventory takes. Some companies hired, third-party services to be able to do their inventory takes and things like that. They rented equipment. They did a lot of different things. But when you look at the business model, you think about it. Every day, somebody's creating a price tag. Every day, somebody's using a device for almost the same functionality as what those inventory devices you're renting is doing. So that's step one. Second to that was the person that most knows the inventory is your own people, not somebody that you hire that comes in once or twice a year into the store. So that's step two. And then third to that, if you strategically look at this, you could offset payroll and expenses to be able to do your own take within a convenient time that makes sense for the total business. And so, I say all that to say this one company where I was a leader at, we looked at the inventory model, we looked at the inventory take process, and I did a real bulldogish move. I showed an ROI that I could bring to the organization if we took this process in-house. We took it in-house, we had our own equipment, we trained our people, and we were able to not only just do it for one inventory take, but we were set up to be able to do interim inventory takes. We're set up to do cycle counts. We're set up to leverage RFID. But I showed this total value that I could bring to the organization by just taking this bold move and doing something different, changing status quo that was happening in the organization.
That's a big shift too. That's a big change.
Especially when you have a lot of legacy people that have been with the organization a lot longer than you have. And you're the new guy on the block trying to turn this Titanic around. I will say this though, I had a conversation with their chief operating officer not too long ago, and they shared back with me that the model that was put in place has been successful with them. They've grown over the last couple of years with the model, and now that model is their template for everything under their brand. I just sat back and just said, wow, like that was for me. That in my head was like, wow, job well done for being different, to challenging status quo and to pushing what would add value. And you think about it, that even the teams there today, that's a huge value for them to show what they're able to bring to the table and how they can look at the business and supply information and data to the business.
Hey, Khris,
Tony,
we
I got
talked a
two more
lot.
questions.
Oh, sorry.
I
We
was
talked-
just gonna say I've got two more questions about the future of LP and the future for Khris, if you want to get in.
Yeah, no, that's something I want to touch on. We talked about LP as far as, where it was when we all, probably around the same time, like join the ranks, if you will, of LP. And so the where we've come from then until now, right? What does the future look like in your opinion, Khris, for the industry?
If I had a crystal ball and you were sitting in front of me and I'm about to read the future, I say that we'll see a lot more leveraging of data analytics and resources that are going to predict where we should be spending our time or predict where we should be focused. I urge every AP leader out there, as your business, keep your ear to the ground. As your organizations are rolling out AI technology, they're rolling out different technology infrastructures. Think about ways that you can take that technology and leverage it within your business portfolio. Being able to get early out the gate with the adoption of that technology, or even to be at the table when they're thinking about buying or procuring that technology, think about it. All of it's going to touch back to what you do: inventory and reducing loss and driving profitability. And so, I think we see a lot more of the AI rollouts happening. We see a lot more technology rollout happening, even to the point of understanding customer shopping behavior. Being able to see how the customer shops. You think about, on the flip side of that, could we see when those same behaviors happen and we have individuals that are going about to commit a loss or cause a loss in the store? So I think when you bring all those together, the future is going to be tech driven. And it's the time now to really seize onto that, latch into that. Don't be afraid of it. But I think that's where we're going, Tony. I mean, I see it. I see that's where we're
Yeah,
going.
I think you're dead on, Chris. I mean, it's definitely technology. It's funny because I am, obviously I work for Think LP, a technology company, and I don't think anyone would say that I'm a tech whiz, basically. That's not my forte. But even I, right, have delved into AI, and oh my God, Chris, the amount of things that you can, and this is just for me, quite, if I'm being honest, just the
Yeah.
last like few months, right, where I started like, well, wait a minute, couldn't I? And then just the stuff that you can, it's just unbelievable how much more productive you can be. But now it's actually like an addiction, if I'm being
Yeah.
honest, right? I mean, I'm on a personal trip in the UK with my son, and instead of like Google, I don't even use Google anymore. I use it like, I've got the Chat GPT app on my
Yeah.
phone, and I'm putting like
Yeah.
it's like an addiction, but it is unbelievable how much you can get done with it. It's incredible.
I mean,
Even for a non-tech folk like myself.
there
So
you go.
listening, if you say, you don't know, you don't have to, okay, it can still help you too. I can attest to that. So,
Very true. Very true.
Well, Chris, listen, I can't thank you enough. This has been a great call. You've been just as energetic and informative as we assumed that you would be. I learned a lot about you. So if we could, we just wrap it up with one more question.
Yeah, man.
What does the future look like for you? What is your next big passion project?
For me, I am enjoying the space that I'm at with RILA.
Good answer.
I love the fact, one of the big pluses for me is that I get to be connected or stay connected with all my industry friends. So even though I might not have the walkie-talkie anymore, or work for a retailer, driving profitability for a retailer, I'm still connected with the mission. I'm still connected with how do we solve for retailers' biggest challenges, and that is driving safer environments and reducing loss. So, and keeping people safe in their stores. And so, like, that for me, I'm enjoying the space that I'm in. I have a lot of projects that I'm looking at bringing to the forefront within RILA. Different data projects, different things to look at the industry a little bit differently, innovative looks or approaches, and all these things that I've started internally with the teams. My team at RILA, that they chuckle a lot because I always throw some ideas on the board and they're like, I don't know. And so and then we take it back to our members and they're like, oh my God, that sounds great. And it's like, okay, well, let's start running to figure this out. But what I'll say for me is it's really kind of staying in tune with what's happening across the retail industry and being used by the leaders that still sit in that practitioner seat to be able to support them and to drive change across the industry, and then supporting the solution providers like you guys, like helping you guys to meet the retailers where they need to be met, and then advocating on Capitol Hill to get some support legislatively for the challenges that we face.
Love it, man. Love it. Tony, you got anything else?
no, Chris, just appreciate the time. I concur with Johnny. I mean, we knew this would be, great conversation and interactive and had a lot of energy. We appreciate it. Appreciate you jumping on our podcast here. It's been a good time. Love working with you. Obviously we continue to work with you. Excited about that. And yeah, just really appreciate your time. And hopefully it's not 110 degrees now since you turned off the AC. So with that noise. So hopefully not dying there. But just been great. Always great catching up with you. And yeah, we appreciate it.
I appreciate you
Chris,
guys. Thanks for having me on.
Chris, thanks for the time. And more importantly, thanks for everything you're doing for us. we know that you're going to bat for us, and we really appreciate it as an industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Appreciate your time, man. Take care.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to It's Your Loss, where we explore the strategies, stories, and data driving the future of loss prevention. This podcast is brought to you by ThinkLP, powering loss prevention for over 200 leading retailers and helping protect people and profits around the world. If you got value from today's episode, make sure to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube so you never miss an update. Let's keep the conversation going. Follow Tony Shepard and Johnny Custer on LinkedIn for more insights, stories from the field, and industry updates between episodes. We'll be back soon with more news, more strategy, and yes, probably another crazy loss prevention story or two. Until then, keep protecting people, securing profits, and try not to let it be your loss.